Let's go.
All right, welcome everybody. Got the Cabo San Lucas crew here. Um, Austin, Bristol, global team. Meeting of minds. And yeah, we've been on vacation here, so not too much news to report on our end, but I did come up with like a brief agenda that we could go over. First of all, Phil, is there anything that you wanted to talk about for this one?
Yes, there is actually something, Keith. I have to bring it up.
Uh-oh.
It's something you posted on the Ideas channel, which is the Zapier model. I'd like to hear more about that because I'm not familiar with Zapier at all. So I think we could maybe discuss once we've covered the points you want to cover, we could talk about it.
Okay. So I gotta lean over because trying to get all of us in the frame.
Oh, Summit, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh, I was just asking if people needed me to go on mute on my side because there are just a few other people walking around on my side. You just ignore me. Don't worry. Sorry.
Look, I didn't hear anything.
Yep, you sound good.
We'll mute. I can mute you if necessary, I think. Or Phil can. John, how's it going? And anything on your mind for this week?
I saw this funny meme on Twitter that showed the sweat coin, and I don't know if I posted it. I didn't post it anywhere where you could see it, but it showed this like machine with a bunch of cell phones, you know, like a scammer or somebody utilizing and moving the phones all together at once to gain the credit for the sweat coin. I'm like, I wonder if something like that could, yeah, I guess since you don't get, well, do you get compensated for your movement in Re-Public app like you do Sweatcoin?
It's just right now, since the data is not worth anything because there's so few people using it. I'm just doing what Streamer did for Swash, which is kind of like you just drip out tokens every day. So it's just whether you are contributing. Well, if you join the data unions, then you'll just get dripped the same amount of tokens no matter what sort of like activity that you contribute. So it's even easier to game than that.
I have it bookmarked. I'll put it in the messages here, but it just made me think. I'm like, like, could this be a point of criticism?
Yeah.
There we go.
I wouldn't say though, Keith, that's something Summit has brought up a few times. I don't think that the data isn't worth much though. I do think that data that's not anonymized, like even one person can actually be valuable.
Yeah.
That's just a question of what data is being collected. Right now, the data that we're collecting has a certain amount of value, but there could be other data sets that have more value.
Yeah, and in my mind, we're still in the proof of concept phase, but eventually, you know, we are going to have to account for people hooking up like thousands of phones to like machines and stuff. But that's a problem for tons of different products, not just ours, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be scammers out there. So.
And if like the actual goal is
Sorry, I'm just playing that video.
oh, that's funny. If the actual goal is just understanding your own data though.
Yeah. That's kind of where I figured the differentiation was between Re-Public and something like Sweatcoin, where it's just purely about, you know, capitalizing off of your data, where Re-Public is more about, you know, I have my own data and I'll put it on the marketplace for sale, and it's for my own personal use.
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't want to game it, like that deters gaming the system.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah, I mean, something like that, just watching the video is definitely like stuff that you have to like automate detection. Like, are these 7 phones like all doing the same thing at the exact same time in the exact same place? Like that sort of stuff might be easy, but then once you start like moving those away from each other and then
Yeah.
setting them off sync or whatever, and it's like an arms race. But yeah, that's why I think one of the reasons it's more interesting just to like focus on like what Summit's been saying, which is, what's useful to just the individual from their own data. And then I think if we're focusing on that problem for in the short term, medium term, then in the long term, it's going to be easy to like move over into that sharing side with tools that make it easy to detect that sort of thing, because like you have your data set, and the more data you have, the easier it is to like fingerprint like your identity without actually revealing anything, because it's just kind of an aggregate fingerprint of your data. But we can talk about that.
Sweatcoin says they have 100 million users registered. I find that very hard to believe.
Yeah.
Like there aren't 100 million users in crypto.
Yeah.
Well, if every user has 12 phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not one of those users. I've never downloaded
Nice.
Sweatcoin.
That's right. There you go.
I did get an offer.
Users.
A very nice community member offered a few months ago to spin up like 1,000 Android users for Re-Public, because they were able to emulate like an Android device just virtually. So I was like, oh, thanks, but I think we'll just continue chipping away the real devices.
I mean, people do that on Fiverr all the time. They spin up YouTube channels, and they, by bot or however they accomplish it, they get 1,000 subscribers to the point of monetization on YouTube, and then they sell those accounts to would-be podcasters and YouTubers, as prepackaged accounts with 1,000 subscribers and monetize instantly, and it's just like, yeah. I'm actually helping somebody start a podcast right now that has this YouTube account that they had bought that with 1,000 subscribers. And I went in and looked at it, and I was like, wow, how do they do that? Do other Fiverr people all band together and subscribe to each other? And then with the use of multiple accounts and bots, they can accomplish 1,000. And I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I think anything and everything, there's like, I don't know, but there's like a good 30% of activity, or maybe even more, on like Twitter and everything. That's just
Yeah.
like,
So from like a data analysis perspective, how would you account for that mush factor of just like bad info and scam and bot info? Is AI able to learn to distinguish that from real data?
yeah, the way I was thinking about it before we kind of moved into like consumer, like passive data collection was, and where I came from was like government organizations or agencies that are that they're getting like responses on mobile devices from the field to like was essentially a survey or just like a form that people would have to fill out. And so within your data model, or the things that you're expecting to get, it was interesting to see them kind of identify what was probably like fake data or like misreported data. And it seems like the only real way to do it is like within like a data set or collection of like buyers and suppliers. Like the buyers and the suppliers need to be like rating each other in some sort of like reputation scheme where like, you know, the buyers are flagging just from their own like knowledge, you know, which records seem like weird or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Republic can maybe like automate tracking those down, or just you know, and then trying to just assemble like a model like within a certain like data set, like what's likely to be, you know, an accurate contribution. And then you can start isolating and like investigating just like the anomalous ones.
Well, this kind of like gets into the whole Web3 ID type of space. And like Orange Protocol, I work a lot on a Crypto Sapiens with Humpty Calderon, and he's one of the founders of Orange Protocol. And they're building out, like along with Bright ID and Ontology, this entire Web3 ID reputation system and structure to have for everybody to have decentralized IDs, and how this could play into something like Republic. I mean, to me, decentralized ID kind of seems like an oxymoron, but I'm trying to get my head completely wrapped around it. I see Philip wants to say something.
Yeah, just for the whole monetization aspect, John, that's where I see ID coming in, because I think the ID part is important, because you don't want those sweat coin like phones around. Like you want basically some proof of humanity. And I'd say my like vision of like a data dignified world is one where when you're contributing to some sort of like to a machine learning algorithm or something, it's possible to track your contributions. So I do think there has to be some sort of like ID component to it, to be able to track that you're the one who like, you know, you're the translator that helped to create like that new version of Google Translate or whatever.
Yeah. And there's a new project as well called Govern that's doing that. It's tracking DAO contributions. And right now, Orange Protocol is mainly being used for things like you know, Aave. They're partnering with Aave to figure out how to do under collateralized loans. It's how to be able to come into a new DAO where nobody knows you, but you know, your reputation goes with you. And you know, it can kind of serve, maybe you take your data in with you into Republic without Republic even having to previously collect your data, and then maybe have that count towards part of your, you know, data contribution.
Yeah, and I think it I kind of think of these as different like silos where you can kind of get in the weeds of like how each of these things is executed. And for me, I think Republic will like help with all those endeavors, but I don't know if it makes sense for us to like start building any of that ourselves, where it's like you know, there's like Ceramic and these decentralized ID services, and in my mind those are just places that you can like integrate Republic with. Like if you do want to share your data and you do need an ID, you can bring your own ID from other places. If those places need to access some of your personal data in order to like enact their ID or like proof of humanity or whatever, then Republic can help you like share that data. But those are kind of like apps that run on top of your your data, and I feel like really smart people need to do those things. So I feel like I've got my mind around like the collecting and visualizing and sharing of data, but you know, all those like zero knowledge proofs and like proof of humanity and stuff is kind of above my head.
Yeah, so you got like a specific narrow focus that you're trying to accomplish, and you know, not letting all the other distractions take it off of track, although they would be nice for somebody to build it on top of it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're all like potential partners, and they can guide maybe the roadmap of the different types of data that Republic collects and handles. Like if we have a partner that wants to fund us to like prioritize this data set because they want, to access people who have that and they want to be able to use it, then like I'm open to that. But whenever we're talking about like features or applications that could come from your personal data, then I would just see if anybody else is doing it that we can partner with, rather than like try and build that. I don't know, Summit, do you have any thoughts on that?
On the question of who's going to build the apps on top of availability of user data?
Well, yeah, just on like the line of like where Re-Public stops and like other services begin, like our purview or scope.
I think that it's in some ways a little bit like the App Store. Like you don't really get a single app from the Apple App Store per se. Of course, they give you maps and they give you messaging. So they give you some core apps that are really powerful, but really, 99.99999% of the apps in the App Store are not from Apple or Google in the Play Store, et cetera. So I think that we need, I can't remember who it is that keeps on talking about daily use, maybe it's Phil. I think we need a few minimum features that cause it to be interesting to go back into your app, let's just say once a day. Like that's actually pretty high frequency. But beyond that, I think we need to be getting the innovativeness and the clever ideas from lots of other developers building, because I think that not only from a resourcing point of view, but also from a creativity point of view, no team, no matter how good the team members are, of 5, 10, even 500 people, can really come up with the amount of innovation that users are going to want in the world. So my thought is that I would draw that line pretty far to the left. I think that a simple visualization, like, hey, you've got 10 apps, you've got 10 data sources connected, here's an interesting thing for each of those data sources, is probably worthwhile. But I think that beyond that, we want to make it easy for developers to come on board.
I like that. That's a good segue into maybe your Zapier point, or do you want to go through your list?
Oh yeah, well, I think I would be better about kicking it to you guys if we were actually on individual squares. Do you have anything else?
No.
Brother.
In Cabo, both mine and Corey's neck hurts.
Yeah.
Our kids have not drowned. That's the update.
Hashtag vacation fails.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we could move on to the Zapier stuff. I don't know, Summit, did you say whether you had anything that you wanted to discuss in particular?
I think one thing that would be helpful is a little bit of a roadmap so that we can look out maybe 3 months or 6 months. So not like a 5-year roadmap, but maybe just a 1 quarter, 2 quarter roadmap that we can be thinking about, and and then brainstorming how we can be helpful and help keep on driving the project forward. So I think getting the vision statement was really helpful. And then I think the next thing is, okay, if we have this vision, then what does that mean we're going to do now and in the short to medium term future?
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm just confused
He's
here.
adding it to the agenda. That's what's happening right now. In case you were wondering.
Yeah, I had discussing the roadmap on here, so maybe I'll just leave that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is this post. I got really amped up about viewing data in this way, where I don't know if anyone's familiar with Zapier, but it's kind of a place where you connect like any of your services. Like you can connect like Twitter to your calendar, and anytime like you tweet this, it puts this on your calendar, or anytime somebody else emails you, it creates like a to-do item on your to-do app or stuff like that. And I've been using it for a long time, and it's a good like paradigm, I think, for what we're talking about, where I envision like in the Re-Public app, you just have a bunch of different sources that you can like bring in, like whatever your personal services are, like Garmin or Strava or whatever, and then we can have this concept of like a recipe or different ways that people have like combined those, because part of Zapier is you can see what other people have done. Like if you don't have any like ideas, you can kind of browse through like interesting ways that people have connected their stuff, and then just like with a single click you can like, you know, authenticate your two services and then like use the recipe that somebody else created. And it's kind of like these building blocks that the user community can put together.
So I would say there's like two types of users of it, right? Like developers who make these connectors, and then someone like me who uses what other people create. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. They have like the power users where it's just like a form that you fill out, and it's easy to be like, oh, this part of this service, I can just say put this like Twitter username here in the spreadsheet, and then go. And then every time like you get an app mentioned, then it'll create a record in the spreadsheet for you, and it makes it, I don't know, it's like a form. But I mean, that's the question of like power users versus like casual users, and who that is. For us, I'd prefer to move, maybe we start at power user and then move towards you know, less technical people. But
It's called
I think it's
Zapier.
oh, sorry.
go ahead, so
Zapier is Zapier. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's a great analogy. It's a company I've been tracking for a while also. And in particular, there are aspects of the model that I think are relevant to us. So for example, they have over 3,500 app integrations as of the last time I checked, which was 6 or 9 months ago. Maybe that's higher. Maybe the information I have is dated, but they have thousands and thousands. I don't think that they made thousands and thousands. The community helped build those templates and connectors. And so I think that's a great model for Re-Public to think about, which is, can we have an environment in which a developer puts up a template that's the downloading capability for Strava, or the downloading capability for Runkeeper, or the downloading capability for Nike Run. Like as you go down any given vertical of apps, you go from the 5 or 6 biggest to a medium tail and then a long tail. And do we want to be writing all those connectors? And there could just be an economic model that says, hey, when your template gets used, you get a certain amount of money, a certain amount of coin as your template gets used. So you have an economic incentive in doing so. And there would have to be some thinking around, if multiple people write a template, how do they get used? Well, presumably there's a validation on which ones work, and then there can be like a round robin where we just randomly select one, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think we're gonna have those problems in the short term. We'll just be struggling to get one developer at a time to do a template. But I think the idea of leverage so that you can get thousands of connectors that are using the infrastructure of being on a user's phone or device and downloading is very powerful.
I totally agree.
and so Zapier is like kind of live data, you know, it's like all these web servers, like when this thing happens, do this, and it's kind of like connecting all that. And I think our mechanism would just be like download and always like keep pulling down the user's data for them, and then have some sort of ours would be more like visualizing or like dashboard or something. So like Zapier is like trigger oriented, like when this happens, do this. But this would be more like first, like grab all the data from my service and then put it in my archive, and then but then allow me to like mix and match that data with like all these other data types that I've pulled in. So it's like the Strava app would need to like continuously kind of pull down that data as you continue to use Strava, but then it would also need to have like some hooks that like a developer can hook into to be like, oh, let's pull this from Strava and then combine it with like Spotify over here, and then the developer can kind of make that recipe of like what that visualization or that experience kind of looks like based on those two. And then maybe it doesn't even have to be two, it can be like, Strava and Spotify and whatever your Twitter followers or something.
So step one,
Let's get it.
automatically download every day
Yeah.
and put into
Right.
a bucket.
Yeah.
And then that's step one. And then nice to have would be visualization of data that means something.
Mhm.
But I think step one could be manually importing your data. Because now, like, Keith, I've told you before about like Poly, the cooperative. On their app, it's nice. Like they allow you to, they tell you like step by step how to export your like Google data or your Facebook data. And then once you've got it downloaded, you import it on their app. And then they allow you to visualize a bunch of stuff from that Google or Facebook data. So you do it manually, but
What's the URL for that, or what's the link?
it's Poly, POLY.coop. Yeah, so they're doing it manually, but you still get, that visualization aspect. So I think like the MVP can be something that's more manual.
Yeah, so
Oh,
you already did that with taking screenshots of the Strava.
Yeah, I had actually downloaded all that data, so I have that. I can bundle that up and share it if anybody's interested.
Yeah, and then maybe we homebrew the visualization aspect, because I know I've already kind of started that with like Spotify. I showed you all, and then after I do a few of them myself, I'll have a better idea of like what's common between all these that we need to like provide support for developers for, and kind of a roadmap if you're going to do your own.
I have a question about the Zapier thing. So if I'm getting my head around this, it would be like somebody has a Strava app, and then at the point when they reach like 100 miles of running, then maybe a shoe company could get a ping that that person is a lead to sell them a pair of shoes.
Yeah, that could be one. I was thinking more like user facing, like the you could
Okay, so
adjust.
how would you turn that around to a user then?
It
Like
pings you
maybe
it tells you buy a new pair of shoes because you're gonna get injured, John.
Yeah.
No, it could be an offer that just says, "Hey, you've reached 100 miles. There are 4 different shoe companies that are bidding for the ability to send you a message if you have reached 100 miles." And maybe it's like 10 cents, maybe it's 20 cents. It's not going to be $5. But the point is, like if you start being able to realistically monetize these individual things, that's I think where the monetization side of this can be interesting.
Okay, so your data would trigger some kind of ping saying, hey, you have this useful data in your whatever repository. Do you want to do XYZ with it? Do you want to give it to this prospective data miner or whatever, for whatever X amount, 10
Yeah,
cents.
so basically there would be shoe companies that would have, it's like an ad campaign where they're putting up an offer that says, we want to reach people who have crossed 100 miles of running in under 30 days. I'm just making up those parameters, obviously. Yeah. But we aren't trying to create, traditional advertising, which is kind of spammy and annoying and people just want to get rid of it. Instead, I'm making this up, obviously. Yeah. There's an offers tab inside the Re-Public app, and you get a little ping that just says, oh, there's a new offer because you reached a milestone. And the milestone is 100 miles, and there are offers that come with that milestone. You don't have to look at it if you don't want. If you think it's stupid, you can ignore it. But if you want to get like $1 worth of incentive having reached the 100 miles, you can. And it is not even like you're selling your data. or even allowing access to your data. What you're really saying is, I'm willing to receive something. And Nike just says, hey, Summit, you just ran 100 miles. We have this awesome shoe for people who run long distances. That's it. That's the whole bargain right there.
Huh.
And
Okay.
I think it's a dynamic that makes more sense than for empowering the individual than the way it is set up now. Because now it's the company goes to Facebook, says, "Oh well, I have this X amount of budget for targeting people." Then Facebook is just targeting people nonstop, and then every time someone engages or clicks on the link, then they get a little commission. Then what Summit is presenting is more like then the individual is empowered and decides if they want to make a few dimes from seeing that
Yeah.
app.
And then after you click in Facebook, it's like, you know, you go down that hole, you're never coming back. You're getting spammed after that. They know who you are.
Then you can't outrun the ads that will follow you around, no matter how far you run.
Popping up out of nowhere. It's like whack-a-mole.
Well, and a more just like purely like user facing thing might be that like once you bring in like your Strava or your running data and your like Amazon purchase history, then maybe the app could show you like, oh, when you bought this shoe, like your running time was like slightly faster than when you bought this shoe. And
oh yeah, product managers would love that. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then also I can think of like during the Texas freeze, you know, maybe weather research agencies would want to know about people's habits during that freeze so they could take the geographical data of specific people during a certain region during a certain event and want to, you know, use that data for their own research purposes. And they could ping you saying, hey, you were in this area during this specific time. Would you want to donate your data? Like something like that? Okay.
Yeah, but I was even saying like without any outside interests, without anyone, like just for your own use, you can see that like, oh, my purchase habits were like this, and that correlates to like my running habits. And maybe there's some insights in there that like, oh, if I, you know, go back to buying this thing, then that helps my running in this way, like whether it's shoes or equipment or diet or whatever it is. I think these sort of like long-term insights, when you have like years and years of different types of data all talking to each other, I think those are the types of insights that are going to be interesting. Like Summit was saying, like all the stuff that enterprise companies wanted like 10 years ago is what we can try and show people just to help them, you know, achieve their goals and see like correlation and causation in their own habits and their own lives.
But would Re-Public walk them through that, or would the user be expected to put those pieces together and see, when I get this much sleep, I'm running this much faster?
Well, I think that's where like the developer would come in and be like, somebody would build that correlation or that like query or that visualization or whatever you call it, that those insights, and then share them, and then anyone with those data sets could then apply it to their own to see if like they get the same insights or different insights or whatever. So eventually it would just be, you know, the power users, the developers creating these, you know, different ways to view your data and then sharing them with the community, so then you don't actually have to be knowledgeable in those areas. All you have to do is like authenticate all your data types so that we can pull it in, and then you can choose like which sort of dashboards or visualizations you want to have, and then it's kind of up to you to either draw those insights, or maybe that could be part of the experience also. I don't know.
And how does that relate to the other piece we're talking about in terms of engaging, you know, a shoe company
like
to
outside, yeah.
the offer?
Well, kind of like what we've been saying, I think the internal stuff needs to be there so that people, as like kind of an onboarding, like there has to be value there without monetizing. Yeah. But then once you're doing that, then I think those combine really well, like the stuff that you're seeing for your own data, and then having those off ramps to be like you know, if you want to share this, you could, or
Yeah. Right. First, get someone interested in their data.
yeah.
Someone interested in
But-
selling their data.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And at the same time, get someone interested in buying that data.
Mhm.
You do that by showing you the platform with thousands of people on there who are engaged with it.
Mhm.
Well, I have another question then about people paying for your data or companies paying for your data. That opens up the whole can of worms of how do they acquire the data token to pay for your data? Is there some kind of exchange service that they would get it on Uniswap, or, you know, like KYC, AML type of procedures in order to be able to jump into that realm and be able to pay with that type of currency?
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can accept like all forms of currency, like just, I mean, the crypto stuff's the easiest because you don't have to set up like a bank account or integrate with Stripe or whatever. But I mean, ideally, most data buyers right now are not going to want to use crypto, and most data providers or consumers or whatever are not going to want to do that. So I think it's really just abstracting that stuff away as much as possible. But probably the UX is going to be pretty bad at the beginning, and then just have to like get easier.
Yeah, I mean, I know these questions are like really far down the road. I'm just, you know, brainstorming, but yeah, it's good to, I guess, think about the long-term deals. This is still proof of concept of, you know, how it's going to work, but yeah, companies wouldn't want to see a data analyst buying Ethereum to convert on Uniswap to data token on their books, maybe. Yeah. Like, what is this? The data analyst is like trying to explain it to them, and you know, the accounting departments is like glazing
there's-
over.
There's actually like interesting arbitrage opportunities where I mean, Re-Public could just be like a, you know, we receive fiat and then like buy the crypto on behalf of whatever service and then do the exchange. But for, you know, on each end, it's very simple, like e-commerce style experience, but then we handle the complication of like all the conversion to like the appropriate coin, and then once we're doing that, there might be actual like upside to holding that over the long term.
Definitely need to develop.
Yeah. And so I guess we got about 15 more minutes. I mean, what's related to this is this, and I think what Corey and I are excited about are the environmental applications for these, and the easiest or the most straightforward use case seems to be like
Girls are crawling in the
That
background.
is so cute.
seems to be like a carbon market stuff that's happening right now, and because there's a whole lexicon being developed around like the data, I don't know, like I forget what this it's like monitoring, verification, and something else. And so I've just noticed, like, I'm part of the Klima DAO and follow a bunch of like the refi companies on Twitter and stuff. And so I think they're slowly waking up to this idea that you're going to need these data streams, and you're going to, for like the same stuff that we're talking about, verifying like that this is an individual person and this is what they did, but without revealing anything else about that person. You're going to need, in these refi projects, like there's this property, it's doing this stuff, like it has these things happening on it, like this is like the carbon in the soil, this is like the air quality like around it, and all these like whatever the metrics are for like verifying that like this property or this project is actually doing what it said it's going to do. And so I think those are like pretty interesting early applications for us to look at, and a lot of that stuff can be folded into like, you know, what's useful for this project is also useful for just like people in general, and it's going to be a lot of the same same methods that need to be applied. And so if we're deciding like which devices to onboard and like which partners to like reach out to just to like get a toehold, I think like the refi space is pretty interesting. So I'll post the proposal I kind of put in the Klima DAO forums. But any thoughts on that? Does that seem like a distraction, or like is the connection not clear there?
Keith, oh, go Samir.
No, I was just going to say that I think that there are so many different use cases that are exciting, and different ones will appeal to different people. So I think it's good to have lots of different ways to give users opportunities to do whatever they think is useful, whether it's make $1 off their running data, change advertising, influence the environment in a different way. Like in many ways, if you said, hey, Summit, you can have 20 cents in return for sharing your running data, or in return of receiving an ad from Nike, that would be low interest. But if you said, hey, you can actually make a contribution that does something, even if it's a small contribution for the planet or the environment, that might be a lot more motivating. So I think that there are non-monetary motivating things that can be more powerful than 20 cents at a time. So I think it's good to have some options.
Mm-hmm. And part of it's just, I mean, we need to talk about like funding at some point, and I think there's a lot of money flowing into that space. And so if it's a matter of like, are we going to just go after like VC money or grants from like, you know, public agencies or like nonprofits, or you know, this kind of like menu, I'd rather go after like the money that's going into like, you know, cleaning up the planet and like storing carbon and getting like, I'm just personally interested in that space. And it also seems pragmatic as far as like, oh, if we can take on some sort of data verification project for like an on-chain carbon market, then we can, you know, start hiring people, and we can move the personal data stuff forward, and you know, we can help with these projects and help people find us too. Like if we get known in like the refi environmental space, then you know, that brings on more users and a different type of users. So,
And Keith, I think this ties in to our roadmap also, like, because I think now that we've like boiled down the vision, and like there's like a quasi infinite like number of use cases. I think now it's more about like picking the ones we're interested in. And like I know you're definitely interested in working with refi, so maybe that could be like one of the first like types of data we tackle.
yeah, that'd be my vote. Corey, I know you've been marinating on this for a while. Do you see any overlap yet between like what you do in carbon markets and projects that would need sort of like data monitoring or verification?
Well, I mean, I think I share the same interest that you're talking about, but I think in terms of where we're at, I'm thinking about it a little more pragmatically. Like, even if that's where I want it to go long term, if we need to go a different direction short term to get there, then I want to do that. I'm still kind of stuck on, but that said, I think you're right. There's a ton of money out there for projects that have to do with carbon offsets or other environmental kind of projects and big, massive research and data sets. So I think the two sort of sort of align right now. Anyway, I keep on getting stuck on trying to partner with big academic institutions because I still think that might be. But I've done a little bit of research, and it's not as easy as I hoped it was going to be. I just don't know. I mean, I think that like that appeals to me. I think it appeals to Summit and you, but I don't know if that's going to appeal to the most people out there. I just don't know. Like it could, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It might be easier to go after, like, just because we're using this as the example of the runner set and the Nikes than it is the, you know, NOAA and environmentalists. And
But Corey, I just think though that for the start, like it has to be something that we find value, like that we care about. Especially like Keith, like is spending his days like coding on Re-Public. If it's a type of data he doesn't care about, then what's the point, you know? So I do think that if it's something that's intrinsically like motivating and type of data you're passionate about, then if it's providing value to yourself and then to the community, it's a good start. And there's definitely like other people out there that are gonna have like interest in what you're building.
Yeah, like a concrete example might be that like if there's a particular device that like a project is trying to get people to buy in order to like install it like at their home or in their neighborhood or like even in like, I don't know, public spaces or whatever it is, then and we find them and partner with them, then we can do like that, the data integration like from the device,
right, and
also expose that project to like Re-Public users in the app as a way to help like onboard them. And then that we could think of that device as just like an app, like the Strava app or the Spotify app. And then there's like, you know, there's stuff like purple air or like just there's air quality stuff. There's like weather stations. That it would just be like finding, I don't think we're going to get granular at like the property level very quickly or whatever, but just like finding the projects that are interested in like consumer data and like, oh, if more people had this device and, you know, we could access that data, then that would help our project or something. That makes sense.
So, something John said earlier in the call is just kind of stuck with me, and I think it's really fascinating. Like using the Texas freeze as an example, we are going to see more and more of these massive, random, hard to predict, but also predictably going to happen events from a community aid to a FEMA perspective, understanding what the people that are in the middle of those impacts are going through and what they're doing and what they need, I think would be hugely valuable to us as a society, as well as, you know, governmental and even private interests. So that's fascinating to me, and I haven't really kind of thought about that yet. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I think that would be. We just need the users first, right? And we can't predict exactly where that's going to happen, but that seems like if we had the users, there's a lot we could do there that would really allow our interests.
I mean, there's already decentralized insurance protocols like the DIP token, and then Ether Risk, which is a decentralized insurance protocols that connects events to IoT devices like weather patterns changes, crop insurance, and they do automatic payouts based upon specific events. And, you know, I guess the Texas Freeze example that you mentioned was, you know, could run somewhat parallel to that, you know, that type of model, you know.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of insurance, but that would be, yeah, insurance companies would want to make use of Re-Public data for sure. So like my next steps are to try and you know, meet with the Klima DAO team and see if they have any visibility like on any devices or projects that you know, need like an integration piece, and also want to like gain exposure through like our efforts, and just kind of start pushing that forward. I don't know if, from my understanding, like this is the first time they've thought of it, but one of their like a new, I don't know, we don't even know if they're a competitor to Klima, but just a new like on-chain carbon market was talking specifically about this, and I put the Twitter thread in that proposal to kind of reference what I was talking about. And I see it's just going to grow and grow, like this need for data aggregation and verification in regards to, you know, the environment. And if we can connect those projects to like the personal, where it's like people who are interested in helping the environment can just like buy a device, hook it up, and integrate like the Re-Public app, I think that would be I don't know, that'd be pretty exciting. And I also think it's not really like that much of a trade-off from going after like some you're saying like Strava and Spotify might be interesting, but like maybe it's an even more powerful, you know, benefit to really feel like you're contributing your data to something that you care about.
What have we thought about how that, so all this talks about an individual user. Have we thought about how about like a municipality? We get like a city to put its data into this.
I think so. Phil, you were looking into doing this before you
Yeah,
ran off. Still, huh?
I did talk at some point with someone from, I'd say like the organization that supports cooperatives in my part of Canada. And so there is like interest for data cooperatives and like aggregating the data of all the cooperatives who are part of, for example, a certain association. But just now it's just not a priority for them. That's what he was telling me. Because they're, for a lot of those cooperatives, like COVID brought new challenges. Like they're so community based that for them, like just bringing a lot of components of their business online is their priority before thinking about pooling their data, for example, in a specific place. But there is interest in the idea of, but it's just not a priority for them. But I do think though that it's something I've been thinking about lately, like Radical Exchange Foundation that is interested in data dignity. There's a lot of people who talk about like data as being something that's more interpersonal as something personal, whereas like, you know, the data that you like, it's the idea of like, I don't know, like you create data, but the people around you create data too. Like there's a way to infer who you are thanks to the other people in the data set. Like your data is more like, it is personal, but it's also interpersonal in some way. So that's why I find what you're bringing up, Corey, interesting, because it's like the data of the group also has a lot of value. It's not only like an individual thing.
Hey, John, thanks for coming.
So basically, Corey, I do think that there would be a lot of value in the like more of a collective data set.
Yeah, I think so. Municipalities we won, but
Yeah.
like families associations, like there's all sorts of groupings of people doing the same thing. If we could get the whole group's data, I think that would in some ways be even more valuable than getting each of their individual data.
Yeah, especially for organizations, like many of them like don't have the time. I'm thinking about like let's say a farmers cooperative or not agriculture cooperative. Like you're focusing, like it'll be really helpful to have like the data that like data from your crops pooled together as like an association where you can gain a lot. By seven, you can gain a lot of insights for the like the group as a whole. So I think that there is like a lot of value there, especially when it's siloed. For example, I don't know, like there's 10 farms that are part of like this association, and they've all got their respective data on their own, like on their own servers, on their own computers, but they're not sharing it together. But then the moment they start sharing it together, they're able to gain even more insights from it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, municipalities are interesting because all that data is supposed to be public, right? And then, but it's also comprised of people's data, like take like sewer sewage monitoring for COVID or whatever. It's like, I don't know, everyone's making contributions to that data set, and but it's of a public good. But then like the public programs that are doing the monitoring, like the data that they generate from it is also public. And so I think I kind of think of municipalities as like partners to like use, like offer Re-Public to their citizens as a way to like contribute data equitably to the city through like a neutral platform instead of like the government, and hopefully like removing some of the stigma, like instead of the government homebrewing like some software to collect the stuff that they want and then trying to convince people that it's cool, it's just like a government app, like don't worry about it. Instead they just come to Re-Public and say what they want to collect, and then that becomes like an app in the Re-Public store that they can then just put up flyers in their town or whatever.
And that's an idea I like, because before diving into the whole like data union space, I interviewed for a company on the Canadian West Coast, and they were doing stuff with data and government. But then I was like at the end of the interview process, and I decided to not go further with it. But they were doing basically, they were like de-siloing like data for government entities, so like municipalities, for example, and then they'd provide, like they do all the analytics for them and everything, which is nice. But like at the end of the day, the individual still didn't have a share of the pie. So I'm like, that doesn't like work with my values. So I didn't want to work there. But a version of this where the individual actually has more control and it's part of the whole process is something that I think like I'd be excited about.
Yeah, that's a good point. Everything out there that I've seen is very like top down, like, okay, what data do we want to get from users, and then how do we build the thing to get that from them? Whereas like what we're talking about is very bottom up, where it's like, okay, well, first just give the silo to the user, and then everything else can kind of emerge out of that. But until that kind of foundational layer is there, until it becomes like bottom up, then you're always going to like, there's going to be so much friction going from the top down, because you're going to just have to offer a poor trade-off to people, because at the end of the day, people are going to want to own everything or have some say in everything that you're taking from them. And you can convince or like trick them or whatever that you're not taking it from them. But that's kind of just the power dynamic.
Yeah.
No matter how well intentioned like the project is.
Yeah, I'm sure, exactly. I'm sure they're all well intentioned, but what I find like sad at the end of the day, that it's nice like you're de-siloing, for example, like data from government or like whatever all those like data initiative are doing. It's all nice, but they all forget the individual. It's like, oh, we're gonna like try to extract like knowledge from the individual without really like giving any credits to the individual who's the one or that group who's producing data.
Yeah. And even if they're theoretically like the beneficiary of the end process, like the process data at the end and like the insights and everything, it's hard to get everybody excited about like that end result, or enough people excited about it that they contribute enough data. It's like you need to think about what's best for the person so that you get enough people to contribute in order to like get the best data out of it, instead of, yeah, it's like a different version of like the Google trade-off,
Yeah.
where it's like, well, we'll give you like really cool maps or whatever. So like, so we'll take your data, thanks.
All right, guys. Well, I think we're out of time. I guess next week we could talk about the roadmap more. Bye, Jenny.
Bye, Phil.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Phil.
Have fun. Stay safe.
All right, we'll see. Bye.
Back to horizontal.